kind of go back a little bit more to the beginning.
Sure.
16 years old, the Burlesque House you're playing. Tell me the stories about playing in the early Burlesque houses.
Well, I was playing a place called in Union City, a burlesque place. I didn't know what burlesque was at the time, but I didn't know what to expect. So all of a sudden I'm playing, you know, a pretty girl, and boom, boom, I'm looking at the music, you know, and as I'm playing, I happen to look up and there's like a couple of things looking at me.
A woman right in front of you, right? With no
Bare-breasted.
clothes on, right?
Yeah, with no clothes on.
Boy, music sure does open doors to a
It
certain
certainly
degree, right?
does,
And
yes.
at that time, there were many of those kinds of shows around. Listen, when I was 12 to 14, I actually played a few of those also myself. They would hire musicians. They paid us very well.
Yeah.
We'd go in there and play, and these girls would come out and dance.
Yeah.
And it could have been at a convention, at a club.
Yes.
It was a very, very popular musical engagement at that time.
Yeah, yeah. Margie Hart was another big stripper at the time. Boy,
You still remember these names?
Oh yeah, I
that's right.
remember Margie Hart, man.
Now, what is it like? They had a pencil and a mustache for you?
Well, I'm playing with a Latin band. Okay, prior to that, I really got with Latin music, and back at the Havana, Madrid, we would meet. There was Chino Pozo on bongo, Chano Pozo conga, Tito Puente, Julio Andino, a whole bunch of Latin, and I loved Latin music, so I really got into it. So we'd have sessions there, and one drummer would play time, then the other would like take off. So I finally got a job with a Latin band called D Cameo at the Nevele Country Club. So here I am with all these Latin guys. I'm just a young kid, maybe 17 or so. So they got these mustaches and all that. So I penciled in a mustache was thick, you know.
You were too young to grow one at the time.
I was much too young to grow. I was much too young to grow one, yeah. So that was wonderful. And I remember a story. Rocky Graziano was training up there to fight Tony Zale. And Rocky would sit in with us. He loved to paddle around on bongos, you know. And he would hang around till 3 o'clock in the morning. I said, Rocky, you can't do that because you're going to fight tomorrow. He says, he's a bum, Tony Zale. I'll knock him out, you know. So to make a long story short, he got knocked out, and Rocky got knocked out in the third round.
Oh my gosh. Serious history.
Yeah.
At some of these performances, there's the story of the bucket of blood.
The Bucket of Blood was a club in the Bronx, and it was a nightclub, and I'm playing with a trio. Gene DeNovi, I don't know if you ever remember the name, piano player. Gene DeNovi and Phil Brown, whatever. And as we're playing, you know, we're doing dance sets, you know, we're playing for the shows, but this is one particular time we're playing a dance set. And this was a very, very wild place. I mean, crazy people came in there. You know, all of a sudden, as we're playing, there's a body flying towards the stage. Somebody shot somebody, and the body is flying towards the stage. I says, "Oh my God, this is how do I get out of here?" This was horrible, you know. So anyhow, I immediately like quit the job. I don't want to get paid. Just I want out, you know, the bucket of blood in the Bronx.
Some tough places to play at.
Oh my God.
But I'm sure all these experiences are what, you know, taught you about not only lessons in music, but lessons in life.
Yes.
This is what it was like.
Yes.
You've played with so many great musicians, and some of these names that you're mentioning, even some of the Latin names, it's really important for this next generation to go and research these names, because these are powerful names in the music industry. Charlie Barnett and Oscar Peterson.
Yeah.
Tell me about these.
Okay,
this story.
Charlie Barnett is a big band at the time, and he was a name band. And I auditioned but you know, being that I was able to read well, and you know, and I particularly learned when you're drumming, learn the brass figures too. So I took up, I started studying from a brass book to learn the syncopation, you know.
Nice.
So I was able to read very well. There was nothing for me at the time to read down big band charts. So I auditioned and I passed it, and I played with him, and it was a wonderful experience.
Well, what a great big band that was at that time. You know, this was about what year was that?
Oh, what year? My God. I would say the late 40s.
Late 40s
yes,
at that time.
The late 40s.
Man, at that time, these bands were just, there were so many of them around.
Yes.
And Oscar Peterson, what about Oscar Peterson?
Oscar Peterson was playing, you know, on the street. At one time, I was playing for all the saxophone players that came on 52nd Street. I think I mentioned it to you. Don Byes, Ben Webster, Coleman Hawkins. And Oscar Peterson would play in another club next door, and I would sit in, and he kind of liked my playing. And then it always happens where a drummer drops out or something, and you wind up getting the gig. You know.
Absolutely.
Well, it was, and I was particularly adept in brushes, because one of my heroes, or one of my dear friends at the time, was Joe Jones. And Joe Jones is a master. You're acquainted with Joe.
I took some lessons with Papa Joe Jones.
Did you?
Absolutely.
My God, Dom,
a brilliant man, and such a gentleman too. Yeah.
Oh, a gentleman, a gentleman. So, and he had, I mean, up-tempo things, you know, and with brushes. So he showed me a few tricks, you know, to get the brush works and how to bounce it on the thing for up-tempos. And it was wonderful. That was a tremendous experience.
You know, Papa Joe Jones is a name in the drumming community that is such a powerful person to understand and study. They called him Mr. Hi-Hat. He played with the Count Basie band for many years.
Yes.
This was he had incredible facility and technique. One of the first guys to put a floor tom on the side of his hi-hat.
Yes.
To go back and forth and play, just some phenomenal technique.
Oh, yes, and he had a personality that was so endearing.
Yeah.
He was just personable and warm, and he was just such a wonderful human being.
He was always smiling.
And man, he was just anything you asked him, he was happy to help you with, and he was wonderful, just marvelous.
Beautiful. The Charleston Underpass story. This is around 1953.
Yeah, the Charleston Underpass. I'm playing at that time with a house band at the Sahara Hotel called the C. Davidson Orchestra. And we're playing, and the star was George Burns, and Sugar Ray Robinson was the opening act. Yeah. So we rehearsed, and I did a thing with Sugar Ray because he was tap dancing. So we'd exchange fours and do a whole bunch of little things, you know. So everything went well at the rehearsal. I went back home. I lived on the west part of town. It was quite away from the Sahara Hotel. So, however, I went back home to get dressed and put my tuxedo on and all that. I'm driving back to the Sahara Hotel, and it's a great big rainstorm. At the time, there was only one way to get through the underpass. There was only one underpass, at the Charleston Underpass. The rainstorm completely flooded it up, and you couldn't get through. Now, I'll give you an idea then, the importance of, drums. People say, drums, how important is it? I believe, and a lot of other people believe, that drums is probably the most important instrument in the orchestra. Yeah. And one of the reasons was when I didn't show up to do the job because I couldn't get through, they canceled the show.
Oh my God.
They canceled the show. I don't think they would have canceled it if it was a trumpet player didn't show up or a saxophone player, but they canceled the show. And unfortunately, they blamed me for it. Well, you shouldn't live on the West Side. So anyhow, I lost my job at the time because of that.
How amazing. So did you end up moving at all from that?
Well,
did you move closer in?
I never lived on the West Side anymore. That was the end of my. Being living it.
That too far
away. That's
yeah.
the end of that.
Yeah.
I wasn't going to take it. I joined the Ted Fiorito band right away, and at the El Rancho. There was only 5 hotels then. No, maybe 6. Now the Sahara was built.
How amazing how Vegas was in the beginning stage of its inception of what it was doing. Some of the names that you played with, it just blows me away. Yeah. Chet Baker. Tell me about Chet Baker.
Okay, I'm playing with Sammy Kaye. I think I told you, Swing and Sway.
Swing and Sway with Sammy Kaye, yeah.
Okay, I wasn't really part of the Chet Baker, but I was adapted playing that kind of music.
Yeah.
With being brought up on 52nd Street and listening to Max Roach.
And that was deep jazz and bebop, and that was a real sound that was
bebop.
new at the time. Yeah.
Right, bebop. So in between, when the show ended, the jazz bands, jazz groups usually go on quite late at night.
Yeah.
So I would go over and sit in with Chet and Sonny Rollins, and it was like a breath of fresh air. I mean, to play, music and the kind of music that I loved, that I grew up with.
Yeah.
Playing, I just loved it, and I don't know what they were into, and as far as the personal habits and all that, but I wasn't into any of those habits.
So you stayed clean in this whole entire process, which
Absolutely.
is amazing because you really caught the beginning of the jazz era that was exploding at the time. You were right there at the cusp of it.
Right
and Sonny Rollins too was there too, right?
Sonny Rollins, yeah. I mean, some great players. I mean, were at that time. I mean, there's just marvelous musicians and jazz players. The street was popping. The street, you're acquainted with 52nd Street.
Absolutely. I mean, at nighttime you could go by there, and there were just club after club.
Yes.
You could walk from one club to the next club and hear the best of the best.
That's right. Yeah. And one after another, it was my life.
Yeah.
It was my entire life. I wasn't making very much money, like I think $50 a week, but it was, who cares?
But at that time, that was enough to survive on.
Well, it paid my rent.
Yeah.
$8 a week for my rent for my apartment on 8th Avenue or 9th Avenue, wherever it was. And it was just marvelous, just a wonderful time.
Fantastic. What is the revolving stage at the Flamingo Lounge with Sinatra? What was that
Okay,
story?
well, there was a revolving stage. I had gotten a job with Bobby Page in the Musical Pages. And at that time, in order to work, things would happen. You go from one job to another. In order to work, I started singing, and he hired me because I could sing some songs. So one night I'm singing this, I think All the Things You Are, whatever, and I'm playing, with one hand, singing. And as the stage is revolving, there's Frank Sinatra sitting at the end of the bar. I said, "Oh my God!" I thought I was going to faint because he was a hero of mine, and I'm not a singer. I was just like fooling people. That was wonderful. And frightening at the same time. Yeah. But there's many things that happened during that period. There was a man that came in with his buddy Jim, and you might know him as Howard Hughes. Okay. And we're making $110 a week, Dom. And
which I guess was decent money at the time again, right?
It was fine, It was fine. It was good money at that time.
Yeah.
So I sang a couple of tunes, and he requested he requested a couple of tunes. Yeah. So every time I would sing a tune, they would send up a $100 bill. He would send up a $100 bill. That was like a fortune for us, a fortune. So this went on. So finally, Jim, his right-hand man, said, "Mr. Hughes would like to meet you." I said, "It'd be my pleasure." So I went down. I said, "Mr. Hughes, what a pleasure it is to meet you." He said, "Do you know any of the girls in the More Orlando's dancers in the main showroom?" I said, "I know them all." I said, "Maybe you could bring them over, a couple of them, come over and sit down and have a drink with us." I said, "I'm sure they won't mind at all." So I brought a few girls, and the girls were like thrilled, I mean, here's the head of RKO Studios and an opportunity to meet Howard Hughes. So this went on for about 3 or 4 weeks, and we were making tremendous money, because he'd keep sending up $100 bills.
Yeah.
It was marvelous. And you know, in the showroom was big stars, you know, at that time.
Well,
Tony Martin, Alan King.
These are great, big names. And Howard Hughes, for those
Yes.
that for the young kids that might not
Yeah.
know Howard Hughes was a huge multi-billionaire. There actually was a movie that was done on Howard Hughes
Yes.
with Leonardo DiCaprio that starred in it.
Yes.
That really kind of told the story about Howard Hughes.
Yes.
He was so huge
Yes.
here in Vegas, doing his thing in Hollywood. That's an amazing story.
You see,
It really
but
is.
people don't realize one thing. He still is a man.
Yeah.
He still is a man. He's got the desires of a man.
Yeah.
You know, he likes to boogie, he likes to enjoy himself.
Yeah.
He likes to go on. He's just, you know, he wasn't. I didn't feel like that I was in the presence of somebody that he wasn't scary.
Right.
He wasn't frightening me. You know,
How
he was
amazing.
just a nice person and just very humble and a sweet man to talk to.
That's amazing. But these are huge stars. I mean, one of the most famous actresses at that time
Yes.
was Betty Hutton.
Yes.
And she also sang. She had like a certain act that she would do here
Well,
in Vegas.
I've got to tell you, Betty Hutton was a big star.
Yeah.
A big star. And at that time, while I was playing with the relief band, see, the relief band plays a different show every night. I don't know if I told you. And the relief band pays twice as much as the regular house band. And it was, so every act that came in at the time, many acts, every star in the world that came in, you know, Lena Horne, Judy Garland, all the biggest stars, I played for them. But once in a while, somebody would bring in their own drummer. Right. Well, Betty Hutton, this particular show, brought in her own drummer. His name was Remo Belli. Remo Belli.
That's right.
Remo, and you know, talking about business and talking about musicians going into business and like expanding. Well, he created this drum head.
Yeah.
And so it wasn't like, you know, the drum head was made from
mylar, from plastic.
Synthetic material.
Yeah.
It wasn't like the skin heads, you know, that they had
Old
before.
animal skin heads
Yes.
that were used at those times.
And they would break quite a bit, especially if you hit them hard. So these heads lasted a lot more, and he became very famous with his drum head and drums and things.
But he
like
was a
that.
working drummer, playing
He
behind
was,
someone
he
like
was a
Betty
wonderful
Hutton.
drummer.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Let me tell you, he was a wonderful drummer. And, you know, I saw him years later at the NAMM show, and he's, Bobby, you know, and he had his display of drums and heads, you know. You're acquainted with the NAMM show. I'm
Absolutely. The NAMM show is one of the largest music conventions that happens in January every year. I've been going to it now. This will be my 40th year going to it.
Is that right?
Absolutely. And I go to it every year with the companies that I'm involved with, and it's exciting to meet all the people and to meet all the legends that are there also that unfortunately many of them are passing away now. We're losing a lot of these great people.
Oh, sure.
Which is why it's so important to capture these stories that you have.
Oh, yeah.
Tell me about Maynard Ferguson. Maynard Ferguson, a phenomenal trumpet player.
Okay.
His band was exciting.
Okay. I'm playing with the relief band. Maynard Ferguson is at the Tropicana in the showroom. And his show was going on like late in the evening, about 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning. It was late, very late shows. So I had gotten a reputation of being a good reader and a player, and he called me. He needed a drummer to open up at the Tropicana. I said, well, I'm playing with the relief band. I said, but if it doesn't interfere, I'll be able to do it. So it so happens it didn't interfere at the time slots, because he was opening, you know, late in the evening, going into the morning, and we were like finishing about like 1 o'clock or so, you know. So Maynard Ferguson, playing with him was a thrill. Charging, man, he dug in, he liked digging in, you know, he liked a lot of, you know, and the band was marvelous, man, just wonderful arrangements. And
Well, I heard Maynard many times that his band was always exciting. And of course, he had the ability of not only playing great improvisational jazz, but he could hit high notes that were incredible.
Yeah, he and another trumpet player, a friend of mine, did duets together. Well, they're playing like up-tempo thing and exchanging things, you know, just moving along very
Fast
quickly.
and up-tempo. Those are exciting songs.
Up-tempo, yes.
You made a note here, and I got to ask this here. Snakes, scorpions at the Tropicana, what?
This is interesting because a friend of mine, Danny Gardina, was a drummer. But he went into the real estate business. And he called me up one time. He says, Bobby, there's a piece of land, you know, for sale, 40-acre piece of land. It's all the way out in the desert. I said, okay, we'll go out and take a look at it. So we went out. It was kind of a windy day. And at that time, when it was windy, all the storm and the sand, you know, would blow and it would get in your face. You couldn't see.
Yeah,
anyhow,
this is the desert,
so we go out and there's like snakes and scorpions on the. I said, what do they want for this? He said, $20,000 for the 40 acres. I said, you're kidding, Danny. I said, who would ever pay that kind of money for ridiculous land like this, you know? To make a long story short, that 40 acres is the Tropicana Hotel, okay? All right, that $20,000, I would have been one of the big bosses with a cigar. Okay, drummer, you're playing too loud, you know? Hold the volume down, you know? And it was...
That's amazing.
It was but I passed on it, and who could afford $20,000? I didn't have that kind of money anyhow. But I probably could have scraped it up with some friends and done it. But you got to have tremendous foresight to get it to that.
It's kind of interesting because in 1960 I was 7 years old and we drove to Disneyland with my family, my parents and my two older brothers and my younger sister.
Yes.
And in driving, we drove across from New York to California.
Yes. And
we came through Vegas. And we saw many at 1960 of lots of lands for $5,000, and Vegas wasn't that big at that time. And we kept on saying, boy, this would be great to buy some land.
Buy a piece of land.
But my parents didn't have the money they were raising 4 kids, and we were just to take this trip to California. So I understand how that was like, and there were some opportunities that sometimes are there that we would love to make those deals, but we just are not able to with that time.
There was a small situation. There was a 10-acre lot that I actually bought. Believe it or not, it was $10 an acre. It's by Rancho Drive. And so I buy this 10 acres for $100, $10 an acre. and I'm waiting to get the deed. And we kept waiting and waiting and waiting. And my wife at the time said, listen, why don't you just call them up and tell them you want $100 back? So I did. Anyhow, that 10 acres is on another strip by Rancho with all the hotels, a whole bunch of new hotels, 10 acres, $100. I mean, I'm telling you, because this was so far out of the way, the land was nothing. Anybody that had $10,000 to the name could have been a multi-millionaire, billionaire if they had some vision.
But I mean, who would have known that Vegas? Listen, we're in the desert.
Yeah.
We're in the middle of nowhere. Who would have known that it would have built to the mega city it is right now?
It's beyond belief. It's really beyond. 5,000 families a month coming in.
Powerful.
It's
very, very
just
powerful.
Unbelievable.
And many times in my life, I did duo gigs where I would be booked, almost simultaneously, and I would run back and forth to the two gigs and go from one gig to another. And that happened rarely.
Sure.
But you did one where you tripled. You played 3 different bands in the same evening.
Well, I was young, first of all, and I had a lot of strength and energy. I got in with this Greek band, Yakubi and the company.
A Greek band,
A Greek band. And I've got to tell you, to be in this business, you got to be very diversified.
Yeah.
If it calls for Greek music, if it calls for Latin music, if it calls for shows, if it calls for commercial bands, if it calls for whatever it calls for, you should be equipped to do it.
Even odd time signatures, you're playing in 9/8 and 7/8.
That's right. Well, this was 9/8, and 9/8 ding 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 ding. And it was 9/8, 7/8, and 5/8. and I got adept at it where I was able to solo on those time signatures.
Beautiful.
So I got kind of a name within the Greek community, and there was Jacobi in the company with this Panagiotis Isachopoulos on accordion, there were Yannis Stamatis on bazooka, and wonderful players. And they invited me to do records with them, and we went into recording studios, and I'm on a whole bunch of Greek records. Then they said, Bobby, we'd like you to come to Greece with us, to Athens, and we're going to open up a nightclub, and you'll be the drummer in Athens, man. We'll sit under the moon, man, and we'll drink wine and eat cheese, I said, thank you, Jacob. I don't think so. But I mean, in order to do that, to survive and to expand and to progress, you've got to be versatile. So this particular time I'm playing with Jacobi, the Greek band, at the Mapes Hotel. And I get a call from Buddy Greco, who's opening up at Harrah's.
And this is in Reno?
In Reno.
Right, okay.
This is in Reno.
Right.
I played with the Greek band in Las Vegas. And then James Darren calls me at the same time. He's at the Harold's Club. And James Darren is a movie actor, and he's sings like Sinatra and wonderful arrangements. So to work with him, it so happened that my schedule permitted me to run from one hotel to another. As I'm running from one hotel to another, I'm changing. I've got this Greek outfit on, and I'm taking that off, putting a tuxedo on. And as I'm running to go up to Harold's Club, I'm running from, I do the show, then we go to Harrah's, and I do the Buddy Greco thing, and run back and do the Greek band. And this went on for 4 weeks. I must have lost about 15 pounds. But it was in other words, in music, I mean, when people call you and they offer you things, and it's kind of an honor. And I felt very honored to be in that position where my name got around, where I would be able to play with different people and different places.
Right.
And everything started to happen very, very good manner,
And how close were the hotels? Because you had the Mapes Hotel, you had Buddy Greco at the Harrah's and James Darren at the Harold Club.
Okay, Harold's Club was right on the same street as the Mapes.
Right.
Okay, Harrods was right around the corner.
Unbelievable.
So I didn't have to go far. And I had off with the Greek band. We had off about an hour and 15 minutes, between shows. So I was able to do the show. And then I would come back and do the Greek band, and Buddy Greco was working late night. So I would go over and play that. And it was like going around like in a spin. It was, oh my God. In fact, talking about it, my head hurts.
What's amazing about it is that playing the different kind of music, were there drum sets at each event that you
yes,
had?
of course.
You had to organize having a set there?
Oh, yes, of course. I had a set there, and I had a set at the, and I used a set of drums at Harrah's to house set. But in fact, I believe there was a set of house set up at Harvey's too. So the only set that I really had my own was with the Greek band.